everybody. Welcome to the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast, where we are here to help you to guess what? Be that lawyer. Yes, someone who's confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. We have a lot of fun on this show, but we also think about like, hey, what can you take away twice a week that's going to help you improve the way you're running your practice, the way you're growing your practice, the way that you're living the best lawyer's life. And a big part of that comes down to the financial side. Interestingly enough, Ryan, I find like there's the business financial side of like what's a healthy law practice or law firm, and then the other piece that people don't talk about very much is the personal business side, not personal business, but like the personal side of finance that you may be making 500,000 a year, right, at working at a law firm, but then what are you like putting away, and how are you really able, like, there are lawyers that want to work with me, and I'm not the cheapest guy, but I'm not the most expensive, but like, let's just say if it's $1,000 a month for a period of time and they can't do it and they're making a half a million a year, I kind of scratch my head. I go, what's going on with that? Like they should have like money coming out their ears. And I think people are living beyond their means. Anyway, I'm going down a a path here too early, but Ryan, thanks for being on the show. We do, as everyone knows, first of all, welcome. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Absolutely. I'm glad to be here, and I love the points you're making so far. I'm
Yeah, kind
completely
of
on board with what you're talking about.
shot out of a can a little bit here, right out of the gate. But let's take a step back. Let's hit your quote of the show. This is from your mentor, Jeff Prager. The goal of a business is to make money, enough money to keep the business healthy and fulfill the personal needs of the owner or owners. So
Yeah.
talk. Why is that such a powerful quote for you? Seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it is straightforward. But as you were just talking about, right, a lot of business owners, I think, don't even get that far, don't even plan that far necessarily, right? You know, how much money do you need to keep your business financially healthy? I think if I asked a lot of business owners, a lot of lawyers that question, they might not have an exact dollar figure, right?
Hmm.
Now, on the personal side, a lot of times I will get a number, right? How much do you really want to make personally this year, right?
Yeah.
That part of it is easily covered, right? But you got to have both sides, right? Because if your business is not financially healthy, you're not going to be able to pull out the money that you want to personally,
Yeah.
right? And so it's just so powerful, and that's really what I help my clients do. I want to make sure that those two numbers are really in check and where we want them to be. And so it's just, that's a quote it's stuck with me for years.
Yeah. And again, I think it's important there's a lot of lawyers out there that are running their own law practices where they really don't know what real health is from a business perspective. And they're just like living check to check. They're just living in debt. They're not paying their bills. And they come sometimes, again, not to put it back on me, but they come to me in this predicament of debt and hardship and everything. And I'm like, that makes it very difficult for them to invest in themselves through me, because where's the money? They got to either get a loan from a rich uncle or something to do it. And it's like the chicken or the egg, right? What comes first? And you can't engage someone to help you with marketing or business development or even your services, Ryan, right? When they're so
Yep.
broken. So I try to advise and just try to get them on a proper track with an understanding that the road ahead is going to be rough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When you dig a hole in business, I think it's harder to get out of that than it is if you dig a hole on your personal side.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, I can see that, but that's why business development too is so powerful in marketing, because you're really in a position to like proactively create the wealth versus just
Yep.
waiting for it to happen or waiting for things to improve. That's not something that I would always, that I would ever recommend. I think that worked in the past, built on reputation and built on relationships, and you could just sit back and the phone rang and everything was groovy. And today it's just there's too much competition, there's too much pressure, rate pressures, whatever it might be. But let's go back in time, and how did you get into working in finance and more specifically working with lawyers, law
Yeah,
firms?
great question. So, my background is in accounting and finance. That's where my degrees are. But I got right out of school and I started working for another CPA firm. One of my first jobs early in my career, and we were actually doing accounting for law firms. And this was back 2015, 2016. we were completely remote, before remote was really a big thing, right? I mean, we worked with law firms nationwide. And like I said, probably 80 or 90% of the clients there were law firms. And so really quickly, I got to experience what it was like to do accounting for law firms. I got to experience meeting with a lot of lawyers, different practice areas, different states, because we were nationwide. So they all had like different trust rules and all that. And during that period of time, I mean, probably over a period of about 2 years, I worked with well over 150 law firms because, as a staff, we always used to kind of cross train, right? And we would sit in on each other's meetings so that if, somebody got sick, right? It was kind of their hit by a bus policy, right?
Yeah.
Somebody got sick, somebody got hit by a bus, there'd be somebody to step in and take over. And so, not only was I working with my own clients, right, and added a few here and there, right, but I was also learning my staff members' clients as well. And so, and we would have a trade month, right, where it was like, hey, I'm taking your clients this month, and I'm going to do the work, and you're taking my clients, and then we would get back kind of in the driver's seat at the end of the month, and we would check everything over and kind of review the work and make sure everything was good to go. But that's really where everything started for me, was working for somebody else, and I got exposure to a lot of law firms really quickly.
Okay. And that sort of leads into where I want to go today, which is let's talk a little bit about the business side, but specifically lawyer comp. I think I could be wrong that I'm feeling like things are at the very tip of the mountain right now as far as how much lawyers are getting paid and have been paid. And again, that's pretty natural, but I think there's a premium right now and there's not a lot of lawyers. I think I was talking to someone on my show the other day. It's like 0.04% unemployment or some ridiculously, like is no unemployment in for lawyers right now. And
Yep.
so with that all being said, what have you seen change in lawyer comp and how lawyer comp is done?
Yeah, so I would completely agree with you. Salaries are definitely, I think, higher for sure,
Okay.
in order to be in a place where it's competitive, right? And I completely agree with you as well. I'm working with a couple of law firms right now that are having a hard time hiring for
Mhm.
sure, and that's been over the course of quite a few months here. Even though they have a really high salary offer and they're an hourly bill firm and pretty low hourly bill requirement.
Mm.
So that that is kind of a little bit scary, um, especially from a profitability side, right? But yeah, I would say, salaries are definitely, I agree with you. They're definitely continuing to grow, and they're on the higher end. And I think when that's the case, you really, as a law firm, when we're, kind of talking about financial health here, you really have to pay attention to and really look at your bonus plans, because when you have a higher payroll cost, those bonus plans can really cut into profitability.
Mm.
So you have to be careful with those.
Yeah. And I think the smaller firms are struggling with, all right, I've got, I used to pay someone, you know, 75 or 100 and now it's 150. And how can I be profitable with someone where they're untested, unproven, they're new, there's training involved, there's whatever it might be, and I'm starting them out at 150 as a small firm, and I think that's scary to the small firm owners these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And the answer is probably, you're not going to be, at least for a little while, right? Which means, in order to really make that higher, you've got to have a little bit more capital built up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which also kind of goes back to the quote of my mentor, you've got to have enough cash to keep the business financially healthy. And having enough cash coming in the door and having a strong enough profit that you can stack up some reserves is really important for hiring in today's market, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I think it comes down to how are law firms planning to reinvest money into the firm versus, just taking it all out or just not having enough where you're barely making ends meet. You're not going to be in a position to grow or thrive without having those reserves. So I love that. And then is a comp package just the dollars and just the numbers, the salary and the bonus, or are there things that law firms should be thinking about to make their comp package look better and be better than maybe the local competitors?
Yeah, so I definitely think, when you're a law firm and you're looking at a comp plan as a whole, from a cost perspective, you need to factor in, above salary and bonus. I mean, you've got taxes you got to pay,
Hmm.
healthcare, retirement, right? Like you were just mentioning, $150,000 salaried attorney, right? That doesn't mean that they cost the firm 150K a year, right? And so we've got to factor that in, right? But I think having those pieces anymore is pretty much a must-have, right? I mean,
Yeah.
unless you're finding attorneys that are, unless you're in the marketplace kind of shopping for attorneys that are semi-retired that want to be part-time and kind of just a contract basis. I mean, those kind of things are going to be must-haves for sure, even for a small firm, right? I mean, I think 401k at an absolute minimum 401k match, in today's marketplace is just, you have to have it.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really interesting. And so I think, and then let me turn it around a little bit from the lawyer's perspective, who maybe they're making great money, maybe they're not at, they're at a big firm, or they don't really want to go out on their own, but they want to maybe think about changing. Now might be the best time to make a move. What should they be looking for in a good culture, environment, financial comp platform?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and that's getting tougher, right? Because I know kind of some old rules, right, where partners would make 20, sometimes 25%, sometimes a little bit more on originations, right? And you start thinking about that in today's world where salaries are higher, right? Let's just say that that's the bonus number that they're starting at. And as the partner, you're not doing all of the work, right? You've got associates that are doing the work. Let's just say you've got a firm that's getting a 4x return on an associate. Let's just
Okay.
say that that's the case, right? So you bring on a case. Um, the firm is going to pay you 20 or 25% for origination. And then in order to get the work done, if they're getting a 4x return on the associate, that means that associate is costing them 25%, right? So now all of a sudden there's a potential scenario where you bring on a case and 50% of that case, of the revenue of that case, is getting paid out to attorneys. So now we've got 50% cost, and that doesn't even count your salary as the partner, right? That
Right.
25% was just bonus figure.
Mm-hmm.
And so now when you add in your salary, right? And hopefully, if you're in this position and you're a partner and you're generating a lot of cases, hopefully as a percentage on a case by case basis, hopefully your salary is small, right? Because you're generating a lot of dollars. But let's just say it's 5%. So now on one case, we have 55% that's going to payroll and bonuses before the firm gets anything for marketing and overhead
Mm-hmm.
and profits,
Yeah.
right? And so I think it's really important, you might be a partner, you might be looking to move, maybe you have, what looks like a really good offer on paper, 20, 25%, but I would really want to know, if those are the numbers, right? How is the firm staying healthy? Because I think that's important too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about, am I going to go to a place and make some really good money and a really great culture? It's also about, are we stacking cash? Are we really healthy? Because the reality is if something bad happens, what's the first thing to go? You're
Yeah.
probably cutting people,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so even if it's not you, right? Even if you're really a producer, you're really a partner, you're bringing in cases, even if it's not you, do you really want to see people that you're working with that if you're going to be there for a while, you've probably built relationships with, be cut, right? I mean, nobody wants that, but I think that's really, some important things to think about.
So then what are you seeing as the typical and appropriate comp plan for a small firm? We're just going to pick on small firms because getting into
Yeah.
big firms and other details is tricky. But if I'm running, let's say, a 5-person firm and I'm
Yep.
busier than, imaginable, and I do hire a recruiter, or I, work with, and there's a lot of great people out there to help. I don't think doing it on your own. Molly McGrath was on the show about a week or two ago, and she was flat out just saying, look, you can't do it yourself and expect to get quality and expect to have it done unless it's a full-time, job for somebody. But what would a good comp plan look like? What should I be willing to invest, and what can I expect if I have the right hire back in return?
Yep. So it definitely depends on the position that we're talking about. But I think associates, when you're looking at it from a law firm perspective, you should put yourself in a position where you're at least a 4x return,
Okay.
right? Um, and that's in collected dollars, right?
Right.
So again, I just want to go back, to your example real quick. If you've got someone that's salaried at 150K, right? Realistically, you guys can, I know your lawyers listening and you don't like math, but if you plug that into a calculator and hit 4 times 4, right? You're like, okay, so they need to bring in 600K, right? But we've got to remember, as I talked about earlier, you've got taxes, 401K, and health insurance,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so I would factor in a little bit more than that. And I would say they've got to do a little bit more than 600K, right?
Hmm.
And that's really in collections. That's dollars that we've got to bring in. So you've got to keep your collection rate high.
Okay.
And where this can really, kind of get out of whack is you're gonna hit a certain point where it's like, wow, it's like probably not even possible for my associate to do that, right? With the hours that they have, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if that's the case, then we've got to start looking at pulling the pricing lever,
Okay.
right? Because that is going to move the needle leaps and bounds, right? Even raising prices $10, $20 an hour, because we got to remember that over the course of the year, this associate's probably billing 1,500 hours, right?
Yeah.
So
So,
I think,
like to get to, let's say 650, 700,000 on an associate at
yep,
1,500 hours, if we call that sort of the standard, not 2,000 and not 1,000, right? And they're billing it, 400. And I'm not asking you to do the math on the spot, but I mean, that's sort of getting us there. Is that the idea? And then they're
yes,
making their 150 plus bonuses plus whatever other things we have to put in. And of course, now the firm is also producing that 4x that we talked about being so important.
yeah. So, and I have a calculator on the other screen. So I ran it real quick, right?
Yeah.
So yes, so what I do is $650,000 in a
Okay.
year, and I divide it by 49 weeks, right? I take
Okay.
out 3 weeks for vacation, holiday, sick time,
Great.
right? So that would mean we're collecting about $13,265 a week on this associate. If we divide that by $400, an hour, that's 33.16 hours.
Okay.
So, now you're not going to collect 100%. So we know that they've got to hit a little bit over 33 hours. And, the question that I always ask is that really doable? Is that sustainable? Right. And to me, I think that's in the ballpark. I think that's a realistic number. Um, so I would say yes. Right.
Okay. Okay.
You know?
Yeah. And again, the idea is that a law firm has to be not only busy enough to bring in that extra person to make it make sense, but also that would hopefully free up the managing partner or free up one of the other partners who makes it rain to go out and develop more business to make sure that faucet stays on so you can get the 4x out of that associate because you're giving them 30 hours, 40 hours, 50 hours, whatever it is that they're billing a week to ensure that you're staying very, very profitable.
Yep. Yep. And then the only other thing I would add to that is, sometimes the trap that law firms can fall in or kind of, they're going to experience a downswing for a short period. And it's not just while that associate's getting ramped up, but a lot of things that small law firms don't think about too is if you're the partner and you're billing at a higher rate, right? And you take a bunch of work off of your plate, transfer it over to an associate, even if it's $100 difference, right? That is, over the course of a month, let's just say that you're billing 150 hours in a month, right? It still makes a difference.
Mhm.
So that's another kind of opportunity cost that I know a lot of firms are structured that way, right? Different
Yeah.
rates for associates versus partners. So that's something we've got to think about too.
Okay. So I think this is just a great conversation because there are a lot of law firm owners that are, afraid to, pay a little extra and get that new person in. They maybe aren't thinking about how the math works and how the ROI can work on that if it's done properly. So I think that's great that you were able to break that down for us. So then how does a law firm owner of let's say a small practice or even an individual practice know that their practice is healthy? What does healthy mean to you as someone who's involved in, dozens and dozens and hundreds of law firms, a year in your past?
Yep. Yeah, so I would say I'm going to give you some minimum numbers that we really should be hitting. Okay.
Okay.
So first of all, and this is also operating under the assumption that the owner is on payroll, regular steady paycheck, right? We're not just taking distributions, regular steady paycheck at a reasonable salary. Now, when I say reasonable, I'm not talking IRS terms, right? There are IRS guidelines that if you have an S corp, you have to have a reasonable salary for tax purposes. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a reasonable living salary. So, as an example, I'll kind of throw out some numbers just so we know where I'm talking, right? If you have a law firm that's doing $1 million a year, right? I would say $70,000 in salary out of $1 million law firm is probably not reasonable, right? That's probably low. At the same time, I would also say $350,000 of a salary is also not reasonable. Okay. So
Hmm.
just so you guys kind of
Looking
catch
at
my
two,
drift.
looking at two extremes.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say it's a decent six figures, right? 150, 175, something like that, right? You're on payroll, consistent paycheck. So that's number one. But then from there, I would say a strong, healthy law firm has a net income of 20 to 25%. Okay, so that means if you've got that $1 million law firm, that means 200 to $250,000 in profits for the year. Okay, that would be kind of my minimum threshold of where a healthy law firm would operate. Now, this would be this would be a firm that we're optimizing for profits, right? This would not be a firm that's trying to, have crazy growth and hire five associates in one year. Okay.
Yeah.
That is,
Yeah.
if you're doing that, you're not going to hit 20, 25%,
Yeah. It's a
right?
different, that's a different story and maybe a tricky one.
Correct. Correct. But this is just, you're really trying to optimize your firm, have
Yeah.
people busy, somewhere between a 20 and 25% net income, percentage. So every dollar that's coming in, you're keeping 20 to 25 cents. That's where I would say that a firm is healthy. Out of that, as the owner, you've got to pay taxes. You've got to pay any debt that you've got, and any distributions that you're going to take also comes out of that money.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. And then there's the other thing I just wanted to hit you up before we kind of wrap up in the next couple of minutes is there's the business side of what's healthy on the business, but then people, make their 175, but they're living the life of someone who makes 300 or 250, and they haven't looked at the numbers in their personal. And I've got a financial planner who I absolutely love. Shout out to Justin Crane out in California, who, I mean, this guy doesn't just look at my P&L and look at all my business numbers, but he looked at my wife and I's finances at home and all of our bills. And we come up with exactly, we want to travel. We want to do this. We're going to, upgrade, downgrade our home at some point, whatever it might be, and really work out the personal finance. Do you have some thoughts about the importance of that?
Yes. Yeah, I would say one of the biggest pieces from a financial perspective that I think most law firm owners and business owners miss is retirement. For sure, hands down, right? I think a lot of business owners have the mindset of, well, one day I'm going to sell my business, right? Or I'm going to sell out to partners and I'm going to have a big exit, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
going to give me kind of this nest egg and I'm going to have that for retirement, right? And unfortunately, I think a lot of times it doesn't happen that way,
No,
right?
that's a really
And
good point.
so yeah, and so I would say that retirement piece is missed, and I completely agree with you on the personal side. I think you should have some help there, right? And not getting yourself into bad debt positions or anything like that, because the other thing is if you're, like you just mentioned, maybe you're making good money and you're 200K and you're kind of living that 300K lifestyle, now you're putting pressure on your business, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Versus if you operate debt free in your personal life, right? Or close to debt free, right? Don't be unreasonable. Then you don't have as much pressure on your business, but also you're more prepared for if something bad happens, or, if you're growing your law firm and maybe you can't take as big of a bonus this year, right? You're not putting pressure on your business to really perform and crank out cash for you.
yeah. Again, it's something that I'm not just going to put it on lawyers. I'm going to put it on, entrepreneurs as
Yep.
well, right? And lawyers are entrepreneurs in many cases, and we're not taking a look at the numbers. We're not bringing in experts like Ryan to help us understand the numbers, understand how much, financially we can handle at work, how much we need to take home, how we're handling our personal finances. It's all part of what will end up putting you in a position of reliability and sustainability and health, or stress, right? And then having to make bad decisions because you can't keep your staff, or there's something's going to give.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One
Awesome,
one
man.
side always affects the other.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to everybody listening that this isn't something you learn in law school, or it isn't something that it really is. It's not really taught anywhere. So you're just figuring it out on your own. I mean, business development, same thing, financial side, marketing, branding. These are all things that you were never really provided any kind of education on. And it's unfortunate because it's so important as more and more attorneys turn to go out on their own, or to start a small firm or join a small firm, that they don't have the business side of things sort of figured out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, as we wrap up, want to talk about your game-changing podcast, which is the Money Guy Show.
Yeah,
What's that?
absolutely. Yeah, so we were just talking about this, really focusing on the retirement side of things, right? And me as a financial guy, I'm always trying to learn, there's areas in finance that I definitely don't know about, right? Tax is probably my next one. I don't do taxes. I'm not interested in it, but I am going to start learning more about it. But right now, yeah, I've been on a retirement kick. And the Money Guy Show is two financial advisors that they have their own podcast. They post it on YouTube, but it's all focused on retirement, not just for individuals but also for business owners. They get into some of those things, and they also kind of give their opinions on some of the bigger financial players in the space, right?
Mm,
On, like, they'll play like a Dave Ramsey clip, and then they'll kind of give their take on it, right? And so I've really been able to learn, a lot from them. Backdoor Roths and like backdoor mega Roths, and you can really stash a lot of money away tax free if you do it the right way, and have it all set up. And so yeah, I've been watching them a lot lately, and just learning more about the retirement side of things, because a lot of
yeah.
business owners miss it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an important piece that everyone needs to sort of get educated on. And I hate like that stuff. I hate details. I hate like that's why it's so important for me to have an advisor like I do now. Because it's one thing for someone to just like watch my money and like stick it somewhere. It's another
Yep.
for someone to step in and say, look, we need to break down everything into what you're doing, what your overhead is monthly, what bills you have coming up, what big things are coming up tax wise. Let's start planning for what is tax free, what maybe you want to put in that isn't tax free, but it's set aside and you won't have to pay tax later, whatever it might be. It's all again part of the financial health that we need to consider. As we wrap up, want to thank our sponsors, of course. Get Staffed Up, phenomenal option for people to not have to pay for healthcare, not have to pay for all that extra stuff, and have a full-time employee that isn't under your umbrella but works directly for you. I've got Chris working for me full-time out of Mexico. He's unbelievable, getting everything done for me that I need done on a daily basis. We've got PimCon for the personal injury folks that want to go and have a first-class experience and see some of the top players in the world help you to be a better marketer. And of course, we've got Lawmatics, just again, breaking everything down on the marketing side and helping me stay focused on the business where a lot of the automations are happening behind the scenes. Ryan, you've been such a phenomenal, this is your second time on the show, and I think we covered a lot of ground the first time, and now we've even covered more. If people want to get in touch with you, they want to learn more about the Net Profit CFO, talk to you about the numbers. What's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, best way to reach me is netprofitcfo.com, right? I keep it very, very simple. In the upper right-hand corner is a link to my calendar, right on the homepage. So you can definitely book a short meeting with me. And that's definitely the best place to find me, is just netprofitcfo.com. We can go from there.
Yeah. You're not a very salesy guy. I mean, people are going to reach out to you and you're going to just like walk them through what you do and what their needs are and how that matches up. And I think that's really what's nice about it. And I do the same thing, right? I do this 30-minute eval, which is, just, hey, how do we get to know each other? Are we a good fit? Don't have to sell you anything. All I need to do is listen and ask questions and figure out, hey, this matches up with what I do and you really need this badly or not. And if not, here, let me, throw a book your way or some other advisors. Really
Absolutely.
great. Yeah,
Absolutely.
really great, Ryan. Thanks so much for being on the show, sharing your wisdom. This was so helpful for, I think, a lot of the people listening. And again, even if you're at a big law firm, you may someday want to go out on your own, or you may, just want to understand the financial side of things better. And Ryan, you're just the tip of the spear, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It was my honor to come on and be a guest today. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome, man. And thank you, everybody, for spending some time on the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast, helping you to continue to, grow and develop that law practice and be that lawyer, someone who's confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. Take care, everybody. Be safe, be well. We'll talk again soon.